Morning and welcome, everybody. I'm now going to invite the panel to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Carla Cruvaro, as you can see on my name. I'm a sex, love and relationship coach. I work with cisgendered men and women around issues of sex, so getting more confident in the bedroom, feeling more pleasure, and then when it comes to relationships, supporting either individuals or couples to get out of blame cycles and feel more connection and intimacy, both physically and emotionally.
My name's Melanie Knight. I'm a sexologist and a somatic sex educator working in North London, focusing primarily on women and postmenopausal women. And I love also working with doing workshops and groups to support sex education and somatic work. That's me.
And I'm Lisa Grazo. I knew there was more available within sex than what I was experiencing, and that's took me on quite some journey. And having sexual experiences, that shut me down rather than open me up, which I gave consent to. And I wasn't actually able to be in the consent which my body was feeling. So my work very much focuses on consent, knowing who the action is for when we're interacting, and really staying in connection with my body at any point in time.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm Sian Johnson. I'm a sex coach for men, and I also am a wheeled consent facilitator. And I'm really delighted to be holding these spaces for these kind of discussions. So some definitions and background to oral sex. So the Cambridge English Dictionary defines oral sex as the activity of using the tongue and lips to touch someone's sexual organs in order to give them pleasure. WebMD, it's often a part of foreplay before intercourse. Many couples use it as a way to warm up or to get in the mood for intercourse, but oral stimulation can also play a part during or after too. It can be just as pleasurable as the standalone act. And they also claim that 85% of sexually active adults between the ages of 18 and 44 report having had oral sex at least once with a partner of the opposite sex. They didn't collect the data for non-heterosexual adults, unfortunately. And just some terms. So fellatio is the stimulation of the penis. Cunnilingus is the stimulation of the vulva, vagina, and clitoris. And anilingus is a stimulation of the anus orally. Although these are clinical terms, there are also some more casual terms to describe oral sex. Panelists, can we name a few?
So I've cheated and pulled up the Urban Chorus to get some. So some of them: sucked off, earthquake head, pipe smoker, Cleveland head, get a taste of the salami, and penile mouthification. And then when it comes to cunnilingus, cleaning the carpet, moustache ride, parcel tongue, silver tongue, lip job.
It seems to miss one of the most common ones that I've known. Right, blowjob.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the blowing's about.
No, I don't know what it's called.
Blow your mind, maybe.
Maybe. And giving head is another one, isn't it, for going down on the penis. And then,
flicking the bean.
Oh, for clitoris.
Yeah, I've heard that one, flicking the bean, yeah.
Yeah. Or one that I remember from school days, it used to be called muff diving. Whatever names we use for it, evidence exists that oral sex seems to occur everywhere, regardless of religion or culture and race, and has existed throughout time, with the earliest depictions of oral sex found amongst other places in ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, in India through Tantra and the Kama Sutra. While oral sex was most certainly taboo in some cultures, the act has certainly become more widely accepted in the West from the 1960s onwards, and is now considered in the West to be a normal part of sexual activity amongst many folks. which kind of brings us to the first question for the panel. How can I approach giving or receiving oral sex if I'm new to it and uncertain? Lisa.
I love that question. I feel that I'm new to it still in some ways. I think it's it's important to know in your body as a woman how you feel about giving and receiving. What feels good for you in terms of exploring a cock? How can you be curious? What do you notice about yourself? How can you taste the textures? What does it feel like? What are the sensations in your body when you are exploring a cock with your mouth? And I think its communication is so important as well. It's communicating what feels good for you. What are you noticing? Keeping it very slow. I'd say keeping it slow, because I always find the slower I go, the more I can stay in connection with myself and not sort of override myself. And also in terms of receiving, really knowing what feels good for me. So I can ask and I can communicate with the person. Because I often find that with partners, they've learnt how to give oral pleasure from previous experiences, from porn, from all sorts, and they have this idea of what women want, like, and that's not necessarily the truth. So really being clear about what feels good for me and expressing that and exploring that, and again keeping it slow so that I can stay in connection with what feels good for me.
So I was just making some notes of some things that were popping into my head. And I think, so I want to speak to the word uncertain. So because a lot of people have this, what should I do? How should I do it? And I think if you understand the anatomy of pleasure when it comes to genitals, I mean, there's going to be differences for everybody. So, because no one body is the same and we all carry our own baggage around different parts of our bodies. So, for example, if we're speaking about, people with penises, some will enjoy their testicles being touched, some won't, and there's a particular way that they might enjoy it or not. But just knowing what is available to touch and how it can potentially be pleasurable. So learning, about women's anatomy of arousal or a man's anatomy of arousal, because I'm not sure if the question is from a man or a woman, but just understanding, a little bit about the genitals means you've got confidence going in there, knowing, where to maybe start and then build up to sort of like the most intense and pleasurable aspects of giving. And then when it comes to receiving, I think a lot of the work is down to, for my own personal journey with this is my own relationship with my own genitals. So how comfortable do I feel being present with my own genitals? And different ways to explore that is, can I look at myself in the mirror? So can I look at my own vulva in the mirror and how do I feel? What do I notice in my own body? I grew up Catholic, with Southern Italian heritage. So there was a lot of baggage for me around, women either being, the virgin or the whore. So that relationship that I had growing up to my own genitals was really, really confusing. And a lot of people hold a lot of shame around their own genitals. And I know, and you'll know yourself, Sian, working with men as well, that even men can have a lot of discomfort around their own genitals, especially when their penis is flaccid. A lot of men feel very insecure around their own flaccid penis. So it's creating that comfort for both people, either whether it's giving or receiving, that you create that safe space for any discomfort and vulnerability that might show up around how they feel about their own bodies. And then again, with regards to, speaking to women and my own personal experience around building my relationship with my genitals is also touching myself. So rather than just going straight for orgasm, having a more intimate connection with touching myself in different ways. Also, as I do mirror work, that can support me then in when somebody else has like their face right up close, which, for a lot of women can feel quite intimidating if someone's looking directly at them. How can I feel comfortable looking directly at myself so that I can invite somebody else to look directly at me too?
Great, thank you. Melanie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the idea of someone who's, someone's new to this, because I think it's so easy to get quickly into patterns and think we know what the other person wants. So I think taking time to enjoy that newness, and any time actually bringing in newness to something. I was, wanting to add, making sure you have that wonder, that that joy of exploring, like there's nowhere to get to. So often with oral sex, it's like, oh, we've got to get to the orgasm, but actually really enjoying the process of exploring your partner's genitalia. And I think a couple of people have touched on this, but really communicating as well, asking that person, are you liking this right now? Are you, would it be better if it was harder or slower or softer, or so I think it's a beautiful, intimate way of getting to know somebody, but also not getting to know them, because one day we might like something and another day we don't. So I think it's really lovely having that newness there, because you are bringing that exploration, and just enjoy it. And like Carla said, knowing some anatomy, understanding there are different parts, certainly, for the woman, what parts might be really lovely to touch, what the parts do. So, some of them will engorge when you play with them, and the same with the man. Like, do you know what happens to different parts? But even if you don't, just asking your partner. I think the communication for me is really key here.
What I find with men who are inexperienced or lack confidence, or perhaps they've had a bad experience or some difficult feedback, and they've kind of they've retreated into, oh, that means my whole sexual technique is out of whack, quite often is that, and it is kind of typical of masculine energy, and there are beautiful things about masculine energy that so there's in no way derogatory, but men are often driven to fix, they're socialized to fix things, to find what the problem is and to solve it. So if men are in that frame of mind, they're kind of like, I have to know what I'm doing. I have to do it all right. I have to get it all right first time. And if I'm not getting it right first time, there's something wrong with me. I've failed in some way. And then there can be as been mentioned previously, there could be bucket loads of shame kicks in then, because men aren't supposed to ask. They're not socialized to ask. Asking is a sign of weakness. So for a lot of men, there's so much trepidation about approaching a woman's genitals. They're like, shit, I don't know what to do. I haven't got my technique down. What do I do if she's not coming yet? What do I do? How long is it taking? How long is it supposed to take? She's not making any noises. What do you do? And I can totally relate to that panic. I spent 11 years with a woman, so I can absolutely, totally relate to that panic. So the invitation is to follow some of the advice that has already been offered by the panelists. Thank you, which is, know the anatomy of arousal. This is absolutely crucial. We just think genitals work in one particular way and they don't. Going slow, communicate with each other, check in around pressure and speed and pleasure. What's your relationship with your own genitals? Can you look at yourself in the mirror? Can you honor the scent and the tastes and the lubrication and the pleasure that's there for you? Accept that everyone is different. So each person is new. Celebrate the newness. Approach with wonder, a sense of exploration and curiosity, and be open to changing and newness from moment to moment, day to day.
Yeah, can I add something? Because I've noticed that, again, knowing you were talking about men, that they can feel, you say, ashamed that I've got it wrong, and that can really shut down. So I think it's really important to practice that. So it becomes a gift to be told what that person wants, rather than it means that I've got it wrong.
It's how can you empower your partner when we see no as a useful piece of information. If we start from the absolute no, when we see no as a useful piece of information, that's just the person. It's about them, not about me. Yeah. And once we take that into account, then how can we move forward that when somebody offers us some feedback or makes a request, how that becomes joyful because, wow, I get to touch this person in the way that they really like. How amazing is that? And it becomes infinitely easier to be able to support somebody in their arousal when we follow what they like and we've empowered them to do so.
I can add a piece here as well, which is around checking in afterwards or allowing yourself to, as a partnership, to be able to have feedback later on as well. I've noticed that sometimes I go into putting up with and not even realizing till like the next day or something like that. And the next day I'm like, why am I upset or something? You know, something didn't, I know that I allowed myself to cross a boundary. So I think there's something also about the relationship as allowing each other to share in a non-judgmental way and and I come back to what you were saying, Sian, about allowing to not take criticism as a criticism, but as a feedback that can enhance the relationship, basically.
A phrase that I really like around that, what everyone's been sharing around sort of consent is, thank you for looking after yourself, because when you learn to say that by saying the words, it's just easier then to reframe, that feedback or that boundary or whatever it might be. And as we've been having this discussion, something that's also come up for me around things like communication is, I want to acknowledge that, what I see with the female clients that I work with is quite often, a lot of women will be faking orgasms and pretending that they enjoy something that they don't. And I know that there was research done in Brazil around why women fake orgasms. I think that the problem is this creates a lot of confusion, especially for men, because they have this idea and this impression that my previous partner really liked it like that. But, did they really, because that can be a really, really big question mark. All of my other partners really enjoyed it. But when we take a look at the orgasm gap, so for women, it's between 30 to 60% that have regular orgasms. And for men, it's considerably higher than that. 20% of women can have orgasms from penetration alone. So once you start unpicking how often women are actually having orgasms, the chances are that, the miscommunication by saying to somebody that you like something when you don't is actually creating more confusion. I think there are two elements to this. A lot of women are fearful of losing a partner, so they will people please, make them feel that they're doing the right thing and they're doing it in the best way to hold on to the relationship. And then also, that some women will have experience in the past voicing what they want or how they like it, and it's not necessarily being received in the best way, so they just quieten down and it's better that I don't say anything. Those men that aren't able to receive the feedback are then moving into future relationships, future partners, and are not able to give their partner pleasure until they meet somebody who is stronger and who is clearer on what they like and what they don't like. And that can feel very, for a man, that can feel very, very almost soul destroying, because they've had this impression the whole time that they're doing the right thing, and then suddenly to realize that they're not doing that. So I think, as women, we need to speak up for ourselves and learn communication skills that encourage our partners to do it in the way that we like, which isn't belittling, which isn't, condescending in any way, and more encouraging them. And then the invitation is for men, as we've just been saying, thank you for looking after yourself. Thank you for communicating your needs and your desires.
Shall we move on to the next question, which is how important is technique? I kind of touched on this a little bit already.
Yeah, my sort of like personal experience and, what I've come to learn on my journey in both giving and receiving is, I think the two main things are understanding the anatomy, because, so as somebody giving oral sex to a woman, understands a lot more, not going straight in necessarily for the clitoris, but, the stimulation around the outside of the vulva first and then gradually moving in. And the fact that, the clitoris can get really, really sensitive. So you're not necessarily going to touch the clitoris. It might be on the outside. So having that information is really important. And then also similar for women, getting really clear on the places on the genitals that can be particularly sensitive and arousing for men. But, in both situations, understanding that everybody's body is different. And then I would say learning to really enjoy giving oral sex is really important. And we all want to feel desired. We all want that somebody sees and touches our body with this sense of like absolute, oh my God, this body's amazing. This person's amazing. I want to enjoy it. And when you feel that from another human being, that in itself transmits so much and helps you relax as well, because you really feel, that energy from the other person. So for the person giving, it's like, how can I tap into my own sense of desire and curiosity and awe and get into that taking quadrant of really, being in that. And so I think combining your own desire and your own enjoyment of oral sex, as in giving it, and then also understanding the anatomy, automatically, like, technique is not even for the most part relevant, because you've got the two main elements of it there.
Great, thank you. Melanie?
Oh, I love what you said about the taking quadrant. I think it's possibly worth explaining a little bit what that means, just for those who haven't done wheel of consent. So that means that doing it for yourself, the action is for you. The taking quadrant actually was one that I really loved. Like, it was like when I'm trying to give to someone, I've been struggling with, am I doing it right? But taking was really amazing for me. It was like, oh my God, I don't have to worry about doing it right. This is for me. I can enjoy it. And there was a whole different energy when I was, and passion and excitement that came in when I was doing it for me. So to just come back to the question though, what was it about technique? I think there is it's so often people will come to me and say, teach me some techniques. And I think that's come from like porn and, we just want to know some techniques to get off a woman or to, to please her. And I very much have to sort of talk about, it's not about technique. And, everything you've said, Carla, is very accurate. It's about learning some of the biology. It's about being in wonder and playfulness and excitement. And I think there is some place to knowing a little bit of technique, like knowing what strokes there are that you could possibly do, because we do also get into patterns of the way we do things. So we've often forgotten that we can, I don't know, do some twisting or some pulling or whatever it might be. So I think there is a place for learning technique, but then letting that go, because it's not about the technique. It's about actually enjoying it. If you're enjoying giving, and I loved you said this, Carla, enjoying giving or taking, then your partner's likely to be enjoying it as well. If you're just trying to get it right or going through the motions because that's what your partner wants, then very often that's going to come across.
Oh, I agree with everything you said. That it is we do need to understand the body to some extent, but it's really about being in the moment. And for me, that's been I used to give blowjobs for the guy, what I thought he wanted, and the ejaculation, orgasm was a goal, and it was not enjoyable for me in any way. So it's like a birthday, Christmas sort of thing, if you're lucky. And then really tapping into being able to explore his body, his genitals for me, what feels good for me. And he feels it, he feels that I'm desiring him and I'm wanting him, and I'm wanting to explore the curiosity around that. And it just takes it to a totally different way of interacting rather than moving towards a specific goal. So I think it's a big one for women, this being able to go into action for ourselves, to feel the pleasure within us moment to moment, what feels good. And when it comes to receiving, I've noticed that if there's any pressure for him, I can feel if he's pressuring me to orgasm, and my body then just goes into that. Which is it's a form of performing, I suppose, to some extent. But so really again slowing down and yeah, there's a lot around slowness for me in terms of receiving. But yeah, in terms of giving, it's such a game changer when I can feel myself and I can move into what feels good and juicy and curious for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for your responses. While you were talking, I made some notes, and I think for me, I agree with everything that you've said, but I think there's a sense of when people are in their heads, when you're worrying about it, you're not enjoying it, and it's likely the person receiving it won't enjoy it either. How to ask your partner is something that occurred to me, because it's all well and good and saying, so how is this? But, there's a way of asking. If you're like asking from a place of, is this good enough for you? Then you're coming from a disempowered place. If you're going, oh, was it all right for you, darling? It's awful to receive that kind of question, especially as a woman, because what you do is you put us in a difficult position. I'm speaking purely obviously as a woman now, but if I'm asked as a woman that kind of question, I am socialized to please you. You are a man. I am socialized to please you. I have been brought up that I have to keep the men in my life happy. It's a generational trauma thing. And most women have this in them. We are programmed to please you. So when you ask us if it was good enough or how was it for you, we are caught between telling you the truth and saying, well, you could do with a little bit more technique here, or I wish you would listen to me when I made requests, or those kinds of things. Or we say, yes, it was fine. And for years we say, yes, it was fine. Yes, it's fine. Everything's fine. Fine is a big word. And that is often because we do not know as women how to speak our truth without you getting upset. And if you get upset, we feel bad because we're supposed to make you happy. So if you want to check in with your woman, how she is receiving your attention, and this applies to right across life, but particularly in oral sex, is you want to keep it to a bare minimum. It's not about you. It's about her experience. So you might say less pressure, more pressure. So rather than saying, how is this? You just say less pressure, more pressure. She gets to choose. She doesn't have to think about it. Less pressure. Great. You know what to do now. Less pressure. More speed, less speed. Oh, less speed. Okay, great. You know what to do now. Here or here. There. Great, you know where to be now. You're giving, without her having to move into the people pleasing and, oh my God, I've got to keep you safe. I've got to keep you happy so you don't abandon me and think I'm an awful person. You just give her two options: more speed, less speed, more pressure, less pressure. Here or there, left or right, ready or not, inside or not. Just two options, and ask her. Take a break and ask her.
Yeah, staying in connection. Yeah, presence, really staying in connection. I staying in connection with her at all times, because I've seen this with clients as well. If the guy goes off into his fantasy and his doing things, the female body can actually feel abandoned. So it's like, at least try, stay with her, because we are conditioned to let you go into what you want to do. And then we can feel abandoned. So really staying present with her, that's so soothing for us. And yeah, we feel it in every cell of our body.
And I just wanted to say that what Sian was just saying then is actually backed up by research. When I was speaking earlier about women faking orgasms, the reason that they do it is because they're worried that their mum might cheat, that they don't want to upset him. So it is very much about managing. A lot of women feel that they need to manage their partners, their sexual partners' emotions and how they feel about themselves. So yeah, there is not just anecdotal evidence, but also research that shows that what Sian's saying is true for a lot of women.
And when you're you're giving and you're in your head, the temptation is to go, oh shit, I've got it wrong, and then ask from that place, and it's awful. It's awful for everybody. So the best bet is, if that happens, is to stop and pause and come into connection, and maybe have a cuddle and have a laugh about it. And, just go, oh yeah, I just totally went into my head then. And oh yeah, I was so close. And without blame or shame, just kind of make a joke of it and laugh to some degree about it and just go, oh yeah, I really screwed up then, didn't I? Yeah, okay. And the cuddles and the reparation is really important in that moment. And then you can still get back to it again later because you're repairing the disconnection. So yeah, great. What if the woman you're with is not enjoying receiving oral, and that she squirms up or tenses up or feels ticklish in some way?
So what I found that's made a difference is probably similar to what we've talked about before: slowing down, really taking time to start gently. I say start gently, I don't mean gently as in touch necessarily, because sometimes the light touch can be the one that's really ticklish. But really starting off with caressing, maybe using fingers first, maybe, really allowing the woman to relax and feel safe, like feel held. I think a lot of what we've said earlier about being present makes a difference. And really allowing some caresses maybe around the whole of the body as well before you go there, taking time. I've also, from a man's point of view, is not taking that as a rejection, because there are a lot of people who have tight vaginas with vaginismus and other issues that women have had because of past history. We do need that time and that loving and that connection to really allow ourselves to relax into it.
I find it very soothing just for him to put his hand on top of my genitals and just let me breathe and feel what's there. And I think we need to know that there is no goal here. So it's about being curious and what feels good in this moment. What do I really need? Maybe I don't want oral sex right now, or, maybe I want something different. And, as we've talked about, as Melanie said, we are so conditioned to please. It's literally in our DNA. And sort of we're reversing this now because men want to please us. They really, really do. They really do. They're just like, but we're so conditioned to please them. So it's a bit, so yeah, just really feeling into, well, what is it? What feels good for me? How can I do things maybe different? Maybe I just need to be held right now. Maybe I need a cuddle. Maybe I need to talk about it. What do I need in this present moment, rather than how can I change how I'm feeling? Because that's, again, if I am tickly and it doesn't feel good, then that's okay too. That I might want something different. Yeah, right now.
Yeah, what I have noticed with the women that I work with is, around squirming, tensing up, that they've either had like bad experiences in the past or had their relationship to their own bodies, because, they're feeling tension, they're feeling potentially shame, embarrassed, or, if they've had a bad experience, then part of them is expecting that bad experience to sort of to erupt again in this present moment. And so I think really intimate exercises such as, breathing together at the same time before doing, just to sort of create that co-regulation. I think it was Lisa that suggested, a hand on the genitals, another one on the heart space, and just like taking a moment to breathe and connect and just slow down. And also, offering compliments as well of the genitals, which initially when you first receive that, if you've never had compliments for your genitals, is extremely uncomfortable. At least that's been my experience, and some of the women that I work with, that's also been their experience. I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but having somebody looking at you can feel really intimidating. But the more that you can gently expose yourself to that and come to love your own body and feel comfortable that someone is looking at you, and removing maybe the goal of like even pleasure, and just allowing the man to be curious in, how the folds of the labia move with different strokes, and just getting curious about how the vulva itself moves and how, the vagina feels inside, asking for consent before, taking the fingers inside, and just sort of, like I said, removing almost like completely the whole pleasure element as well, but just like curiosity. How can we build a connection and relationship so that the woman can feel comfortable just being touched? I find that those ways, because, and the woman does it herself in the ways that I was explaining earlier, mirror work and touching herself. And then in a similar way that the man supporting by doing something similar, and things like, tantric massage, if a man learns tantric massage, that can also support a woman and how she feels being touched and how she feels being observed as well.
Both men and women these days are raised on porn. So if it doesn't look like that, then they must be doing it wrong. So there's that. But I think there's something there about a lot of men are willing to do the work. And what I mean by doing the work, and I've said this before in other forums, doing the work is learning about anatomy, learning about themselves, learning about their own body, learning to step into their own power. And that's not power over, as has been said before. It's not power over, it's power with, how to step into healthy power. So that's the work of men. And there's lots more to that. There's other bits I could add, but that's the work of men. And there is work here for women too. There's many women who are shrouded in shame around their sexuality, around their bodies, around the genitals. And there is work here for women too, particularly when you're reaching midlife, perimenopause, and menopause. There is work here to do. Your body is changing, your circumstances are changing, stress is having a different impact. And seek professional support. Now, obviously, we're all practitioners here. We make a living from working with people around sex and intimacy and relationships. So, of course, I would be biased towards that. But if you can't afford to get professional help, get a book, do internet searches, try and move beyond the shame that is there for both men and women. But try to move beyond the shame that is there. We are living longer and longer, and sex is an integral part of our lives. It's a wonderful way of getting joy and pleasure. You can get more pleasure. More pleasure is available to you. So do the work, find the books, find the YouTube videos, find the therapists, find somebody who can support you to get more pleasure, more joy for you, for yourself first, and then for your partner. How can I find a way to get over how she tastes or smells? I just don't like it.
I'd say if you don't like something, forcing it was not going to help, right? Forcing yourself to like something is not going to help. So how can we diffuse it or make it different maybe? And we talked about maybe using oil so that the taste is different, or even maybe chocolate, anything, if you like the taste of chocolate, you can explore the chocolate. But also maybe just being, for me, that what I would do is being present with what is it that I don't like here, and just slowing down and breathing into that, and being with the experience of what it is, because often there's a blockage there somehow within us that that is causing this dislike, or so it's something that we can lean into but not force ourselves into, work through it, breathe, slow down, breathe. What's going on here for me? Oh, maybe there's a memory, maybe there's something, there's a blockage that may come through. So yeah, that was my short initial reaction.
I would agree sort of with what Lisa was saying, because if I explore my own relationship with ejaculate, for example, like the taste and the texture and all of those different things, for me, it was a blockage about my relationship to ejaculate. And so my invitation would be for somebody who doesn't like the smell or the taste, that exploring what that blockage potentially might be, because there might be something underneath there around their own relationship to genitals or their own conditioning. I know that there is cultural conditioning as well that can happen around oral sex, so for different cultures where oral sex is considered dirty or shameful, being aware that, if you come from a culture with that sort of idea, how that might be affecting how you relate to somebody else's genitals as well.
I would just expand on the word blockage, because I think there's again, it's something that maybe as practitioners we know, or people who've done a lot of work on themselves, but often what we mean by that is that we have a thought. Oh, I don't like this. And very often in the world, if we say we don't like something, or we think we don't like something, we think that's a permanent thing, like I don't like cheese, or I don't like bread, or something like that. But in actual fact, our tastes can change, our bodies can change. And, as Lisa said, so there is a fine balance between not forcing something, but also knowing that the thought you had is just a thought, is not permanent. It's just, this is okay. I'm not enjoying this right now. Okay, what can I do about it? And it might be doing some of the stuff that's been identified, but it also might be just, okay, well, I know this is just a thought, and that's causing what we would call a blockage.
In my response to this is wash before you go to bed, or have a shower, and don't use soap, but be clean. If you've been sat at a desk all day on a very hot summer's day and your partner wants to jump your bones as soon as you get home, don't expect him to go down on you, because we all know that that's not going to be the most delightful place to be right now, unless, like Napoleon, you have a particular fantasy around that, in which case go ahead. But be clean for each other. And there is also something here for me around, did you like your first cigarette? Probably not, but you still carried on anyway. Did you like your first pint of beer? Probably not. It's like, what is that stuff? But you carried on anyway. Yeah. There are ways that you can work yourself around this. It's also things like using lots of saliva to dilute the taste and the flavor, those kinds of things as well. Maybe using coconut oil. Now, not all vulvas or not all penises respond well to coconut oil, but coconut oil, if you use fractionated coconut oil, is amazing. Yeah. There's also, this needs to be consensual, but also putting a mint in your mouth. That can not just only change the taste for you, but it can change the sensations for the person that you're touching. Now, obviously, be careful it doesn't get stuck in your throat and you end up in A&E. None of that business, please. And also, it needs to be consensual. Too much sugar, as Carla's alluded to, too much sugar in a woman's genital area can upset the microbiome. So be careful what you use in that area. It's vitally important. There's lots of ways that you can get over the taste, and it's important to not override your own boundaries and do stuff that you really don't want to do. And at the same time, it's important to make these little choices that make it easier for you both. Great. We're going to open up for questions. So, participating in deep throating. What's safe? My understanding of deep throating is when a penis is enters a woman or another person's mouth to the point of moving into the deepness of the throat. So there's a particular angle that the person needs to be at to allow the penis to enter, so it goes deep into the throat, bypassing the gag reflex, because we all have a gag reflex, which makes us want to vomit if anything gets out. It's a survival response. So bypassing the gag reflex and getting deep into the throat, so there's full penetration. So what is safe? Safe is a subjective word. So if you're talking about physical safety, or are you talking about emotional or consensual safety?
I suppose what would be safe within my body? And how can my body open up to, and I have actually done it with wands. I have been able to open up and my body be open to it. But I've also experienced hitting the gag reflex where, but actually I feel that every time I do reach the gag reflex, that can be a form of healing as well, because it can be a release. So I would actually, exploring it with a wand can be quite nice as well, before doing it with a cock. So really, because then there's no pleasing going on, or so exploring it yourself with a wand. I have a crystal wand, a rose quartz wand that's slightly bent, and the bent wand works really well with the throat. A straight wand doesn't, but a bent crystal wand or a glass wand, exploring with that I find that really useful within my own body to see, because safety is relative, as you say, and when the body's safe, it will open up and expand, but then something can happen that contracts again. Yeah. So really exploring my own body, and I can then feel safe with a wand and maybe not safe with a partner, and safety is relative, and it's a moment to moment thing. It's not something that we can set up.
I would say when it comes to safety is that the woman needs to be, or the person, receiving the penis needs to be the one in control. So they're determining the depth and they're determining the speed, because if not, then, hitting the back of the throat could hurt. If a woman's been able to work through the gag reflex to be able to deep throat, having somebody else determine the speed and the pressure means that there's more likelihood of damaging the throat. So when it comes to physical safety, I would say the woman needs to determine that. So no, like face fucking basically is probably not the best time to be doing face fucking. It's during deep throating.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's brought up memories, because for many years I was into BDSM. I don't explore that so much anymore, but obviously in a sub-dom relationship where I was the sub, it was very often seen as the dom's view that they would just push their cock in and push it in and push it in and until you basically threw up or gagged. I was never a fan of that, and ended up doing it in non-consensual ways, in my view, looking back, that I accepted at the time. So I think when you're talking about safety, I think that is, for me, one is the big things is why are you doing it? Are you doing it for your pleasure, or are you doing it to please someone? One of the things that I struggled with was relaxing into it, and I think, Lisa, Cara, your point about the woman being in control then actually makes a big difference, because taking it slowly and allowing yourself for it to relax then actually allows that gag reflex not necessarily to happen. I think the lack of feeling safe can often come from not feeling like you can breathe, which is the gag reflex, effectively. So I think it is very much something that you need to learn. I love your ideas of the wand. I think taking it slowly, and breathing. I heard a story, this is from one of my Tantra teachers, saying that he'd had someone who'd learned how to deep throat, so much so that she had an orgasm through her throat. and had her throat chakra opening. So I can see that it could be incredibly healing and beautiful. But I think it's so much, again, something we talked about, is so much we're doing it from looking at porn that I think it's such a such a thing that I've certainly found I've survived, not really enjoyed.
And also I would suggest that if a woman is able to move and can have at least one hand on you so she can push you back, or because you can't speak, obviously, but if she can push you back or she can move you, if she's in a position where she can move away or she can push you to indicate that she's had enough, then that that builds in some degree of safety. Yeah. It's an area that's fraught with difficulty, knowing what is and what isn't consensual, which is why I recommend the Wheel of Consent and similar consent models for all couples. I think, all couples, all individuals can explore consent and get more in tune with this.
And I think this is an interesting thing, which is that sometimes, and it goes back to what we were saying about pleasing, I think it's interesting in what we say around consent. Someone who's saying yes isn't necessarily meaning it. And I think there's a deeper level that we're talking about here that you can learn through things like the Wheel of Consent, which is actually, is your body wanting it, is you as a whole person wanting it, and you're not just saying it.
Yeah. Thank you, Melanie, for making that distinction. Yeah, that's the depth of consent. It's a body, it's a whole body consent, not just saying yes because we're socialized to. And when I'm going down on her, is there anything I can do to get her there faster?
I would say to take the idea of getting there faster out of your head, because she will feel the pressure and just sense that that's your goal, and which will close her up. So hopefully I did that in less than a minute.
Yeah, I would agree. And then I would ask her, does she want to get there fast? Is that what she wants? Does she want to have a quick orgasm and go to sleep? That's fine if that's what she wants. But, check in with her and know that there are options, because I think we're so used to doing things in one sort of way, and we don't have to do that anymore. What's it like to slow down? What's it like to explore it in a different way? But at least communicate and make sure that's what she wants. And then ask her how can she get there faster if that's something that both people want.
This question is, who is it for? Because if you're doing it for you, the question is mute. You're doing it for you. You're having a really great time. You're taking pleasure in the experience, and you're taking pleasure in her experience. You're following her body, and the whole thing becomes about pleasure rather than the goal, which was already mentioned. And also there's quite a lot around, if she has an orgasm, then I can have mine. If she has her pleasure, then I can have mine.
But often for a man, her having an orgasm, getting her there, makes him more of a man. Right? So he hasn't completed the job. So it's really difficult for him to enjoy the here and the now and make it for him, for most men, because there's this, if I've completed the job, then I'm a good lover and I'm a good partner. And yeah. But
thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of ego potentially wrapped up into this. Instead of being able to put your ego to one side and just go, this is for us in the moment. There's that drive to have done, to have fixed and achieved. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because then I'm a good lover. Because I hear so many men say, I'm great at oral sex. I'm a giver. I love giving.
Actually, can we speak to this a little bit? There isn't any more questions coming through. We've got a few brief moments. How many of us as practitioners have heard men say, I love giving? And what does that bring up for you? What's the first thing? Just kind of encapsulate that. Oh, I love giving.
For me, it brings up, who's it really for? Yeah. Who is it really for? And, as we know, many of us as practitioners, we break down because we think that the person who's doing is giving. But actually in my body, I've been done to a lot and had many orgasms, but I felt as though in my body, I felt as though I was giving access. And I see that this is as a big problem. I had a client who was, I give my wife lots of pleasure, and she comes, and then when it's my turn, she doesn't want to do anything. And then when he realized that he was working hard to give, but she felt she was giving access to her body, so both people were giving.
I was recently talking to a guy in his, must have been 50s, and he said to me, I so give to my wife all the time, but she doesn't allow me to touch me anymore. Do you know what the issue is? And this was a networking event, so I'm like, I'm not going to go into this, but I could see all over, like, you know, probably that she's not enjoying what he thinks he's giving. And I think this is a common problem. And I think it's a problem both ways. I don't think it's just men to women. I think it's we also have fallen into this trap of thinking, are we giving to our guy? And you know, a previous partner would always ask for massages, and I'd give him a massage, but I'd do it resentfully because I was like, when am I getting my massage back? And I think we're in a society and been brought up that to give, and it goes back to what you're saying, Lisa, who is it really for? Because it's generally there's a, you know, we give in order to get is way we've been taught. And that means it's not authentic giving, and that's on both sides.
Yeah, it is this idea of like, I'm going to give you something so that I get something in return. And this isn't something that we just see in oral sex, but in so many areas of our lives. And like a really simple one is Christmas cards, right? So, you know, I don't get many Christmas cards. I mean, I used to, but I don't now because I don't give them. And so it's really interesting to see that the people that do give me Christmas cards are giving them for their own pure enjoyment and because they want to do that for me. The people that used to give me a Christmas card were doing it just so because they would get one back from me. So when I stopped giving them, you know, they stopped giving because they weren't receiving them in return. And it can be very much like that oral sex I see very, very often. You know, well, I'm not going to go down on him because he's not going down on me, and vice versa, you know. So I'm not going to go down on her because she doesn't go down on me. And this like transactional idea around oral sex that, you know, if you're going to do it, then you need to be receiving it in return.
Thank you. That draws to a close this particular session. Now, I just want to say a huge thank you to the panel here today, Carla and Lisa and Melanie. Thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise. And I also want to say thank you to Karis, who's been our tech and emo support here today. Thank you so much, keeping the safe space. And I want to thank all of you participants for joining us here today, all of you who have registered, spreading the word, learning, doing the work, as we've spoken about before. It's about doing the work, getting curious, noticing, learning, making changes, spreading the word, and the effect rippling out throughout your relationships.